You know, we have an initiative across all of the TV stations that are in our station group to try to solve problems in our communities, and it's kind of above and beyond some of the investigation things that we do. And it's called Solutionaries. So it could be about health, it could be about policing, it could be about the environment or housing. Well, today we're concentrating on animal abuse, especially here in Michigan. It could be dogfighting operations or just simple neglect or housing more animals than people can really care for. Well, Victor Williams has more on what animal groups are doing to try to help combat this problem.
For 14 long years, my dog Kelly was the absolute joy of my life. I didn't look at her like a dog, but more as like a little sister. And that's why for the life of me, I can't understand why someone abuses their pet. Sadly, it's a major problem and an issue playing out right here in the city of Detroit.
A Macomb County veterinarian formally charged today with animal cruelty.
Get over here!
The defendant did seek that dog out in that video. The dog is trying to hide.
Those animals were in this hot house, God knows for how long.
There is growing outrage after no charges are filed after video goes viral showing a puppy being abused.
Animal abuse cases have exploded in the state of Michigan. According to some of the only Michigan-specific crime stats we could find, animal cruelty incidents leapt from 123 in 2016 to 607 in 2021. All of that is very clear here in the Motor City.
We see horrific things. You know, unfortunately, we just got two dogs who were burned with scalding water. We see gunshots. We see choking with extension cords.
A lot of times it's guessing how different scenarios played out for dogs, but what we do see is clearly the marks on their skin that tell a certain story.
And these stories are tragic, but we've found solutions, like listing and tracking animal abusers. I'll explain what that looks like in a moment. But Myron Golden is an animal abuse investigator with Michigan Humane. Usually he's the first one to come into contact with some of the worst animal cruelty cases the city has to offer.
Emergency rescue stuff. We do get the cases where the dog is, or we pick up deceased animals sometime, situations, cruelty cases. We get dogs that they're just so far gone where they can't be treated, and we pick up dogs that's been hit by cars, shot, stabbed, burned, in conditions where they're no longer treatable.
In just the last few months, we've seen a dog buried alive and several others nearly beaten to death. Some simply because of a domestic abuse situation. Detroit Dog Rescue is one of the organizations hoping to stop it all.
Our city has so much resilience, and we've seen so much growth in the past few years, but we have to remember it wasn't that long ago we were talking about bankruptcy. We were talking about foreclosure. So when you have all of those things, it's kind of the unfortunately perfect storm for animal abuse, anger, rage, all of those things, you know, drug abuse, all of those things lead to animal abuse.
Sometimes it can be too much, but at least Michigan Humane has the authority to do something about it from a legal perspective.
We prosecute, we write warrants, we go to court, you know, people go to jail.
But still, for some reason, the last few years have been outrageous in terms of the cases.
Oh, good job. Over a decade at Detroit Dog Rescue, we have seen some of the worst when it comes to animal abuse.
Executive Director Christina Rinaldi says the abuse can lead to so many other negative factors, playing out even in human behavior.
A lot of the times, unfortunately, that leads to child abuse, domestic abuse, where you find animal abuse that is only usually the tip of the iceberg. We've gone on cases with Detroit police where the animal abuse has actually led to evidence of human trafficking, all of those things.
But why does it continue to happen specifically in the city of Detroit? A lot of the time, it's not even intentional.
Sometimes when we arrive on an outreach call, a neighbor just doesn't know how to properly secure their dog, doesn't know how to properly feed their dog. So if we can provide the resources, we're happy to do so.
That seems to be the common theme with many groups trying their best to make sure owners know what's wrong and what's right.
And I think that a lot of times, especially in cases like embedded collar, I don't necessarily think it's someone who's going out and trying to cause harm to an animal, but it's a case of somebody not being educated.
Rebel Dogs Detroit is a group that's been working to spread awareness on the matter. Juniper Fleming is the executive director, always asking owners on the verge of being neglectful if there's anything her organization can do to help.
All right. Would you be interested in learning about resources that give out free crates so you can bring your dog inside on cold days, or free igloos so at least your dog has a warm house on a cold day? Or would you be interested in me purchasing a collar? Or have you heard of free spaying and neutering programs? Those are the kind of resources that are out there in Detroit.
Right side, their back leg is...
The group has been working to place stray dogs just like this little guy.
Somehow these animals, after the abuse or the neglect, they've made it onto the streets, and we're not fully sure how that happens. We're not sure if people let them go because they feel like they can't do anything or they don't want to do anything.
They also help to find fosters and eventual forever homes for the canines, the ones who can, however, find sanctuary in the group's no-kill shelter located on Detroit's west side.
If you see someone, either your neighbor or a friend or a family member, who is neglecting, either on purpose or by accident, a dog, starting a dialogue with them, being in communication, starting with the first question of like, what might you need for support? It can be overwhelming if you start thinking about how pervasive the issue really is, but just seeing it as one conversation at a time and doing what you can to address your immediate community can be a really great way to have an active impact.
Another major issue is dog fighting, which in a way is one of the problems with the solution. These rings are so underground, sometimes they can fly way under the radar and right under a neighbor's nose. Every year, hundreds of pit bulls are seized in dog fighting rings. The sad part is that sometimes the people responsible don't see anything wrong.
We got videos of children at dog fights, like children like 3-4 years old, and they're just watching dog fights. So their entire life, they don't see the issue in it. So then, you know, they grow up and now they're an adult, and that's what their cousins and uncles and fathers and, you know, the older gentlemen around them did. So they naturally fill the void and step in their shoes.
The good news is that the state of Michigan is creating a new animal abuse registry to keep track of those accused of dogfighting and those who are cruel to animals. Juniper says it's a great start, but there needs to be more done.
My first thought is that there should be a limit of you're not allowed to own a dog or you're not allowed to own a pet or whatever, because otherwise, what really is the point? Okay, I know my neighbor has an animal abuse charge, but what can I do about it?
The bottom line is if you see something, say something, as it can make a difference in the dog's life down the line.
We pick up dogs to the point they're so emaciated and lethargic to they can't even walk anymore. And then on the other end, we bring animals in those conditions, and then you see them going up for adoption 3-4 months later, fat and happy. It's hard when you see it up front, but it's very rewarding on the other end.
And even though they're making a difference themselves, the law and rescue groups can't do it alone.
I think what keeps me going and the Detroit Dog Rescue team going there are agencies like Detroit Police, Detroit Fire, that are working so hard to rectify some of these situations, and together we have made progress in the last decade that I've been doing this, and that's what keeps me going.
Remember, these guys are family who only want to make you happy at the end of the day, so why not give them just a little bit more when they give you their all? So if you see something, call the authorities, keep an eye on the neighbor's dog, and remember to respect your own.
There is a lot to discuss here, and we'd like to hear your opinions. Drop a comment below and make sure you hit subscribe to stay up to date with Solutionaries.
So that is a look at what our Solutionaries journalism projects are really here with Graham Media and with Local 4 as well. Victor Williams is joining me live now. And Victor, this was a tremendous report. Number one, thanks for introducing us to Kelly and really the inspiration of the story of taking care of our animals the best way we know how.
Yeah, absolutely, Christy, and thank you so much for allowing me to talk about this. Kelly meant a lot to me. She was really my best friend when I didn't have any growing up. So just knowing that there's so many dogs that look like her, that deal with abuse every day, it's just a little heartbreaking. So this story really hit home for me.
Absolutely. And when we looked at the statistics, and the jump in them, up to 21 in terms of, you have over 600 incidents. And then I think in these last couple of years, because when you talked about the stress that people are under in life, when you looked back at Detroit's bankruptcy and other stressors that people may have, that ends up with animal abuse or in terrible situations, I wonder where things stand now. What were some of the biggest surprises for you in reporting on this story?
Well, the biggest one was that hike in the number from seeing animal abuse cases in the 100 range jumping up to 600 and something after the pandemic and throughout all of that. That was just rough to even know, because I feel like a lot of the people during the pandemic, they had no one to really connect with on the outside. So knowing that your pet was probably the closest thing to you at that time, how could you allow something like this to happen? Or how could we as Detroiters or Michiganders allow things like that to happen? So that was a little shocking for me, but at the same time, it's also shocking to know that there's so many agencies out there trying to stop that. So that is a good thing, at least on the tail end of that. But yeah, just knowing that there's so many pets here in our state, in our region, and in our city that are going through these abuse cases is just a little heart-wrenching as well.
Yeah, but you talk about the organizations that end up working together and saying, okay, this is what we're doing. How can we coordinate resources with someone else? And also working with Detroit Police in terms of enforcement. I loved what one woman in your piece said about we just have to start really with simple questions, like what can we help you with the need now? Do you think it is, there needs to be more information out there for pet owners who might be struggling to know that there are free services for spaying and neutering, that there are free collars available, that there are free shelters that they can put in their backyard? Is that information push?
Absolutely. I think that's also necessary to maybe stop some of these cases. A lot of people just don't know either what they're doing that's wrong. They don't realize that maybe their dog needs to be inside during the winter months. They might not realize that their dog needs sufficient water. It doesn't need to have a collar that's on too tight. These are all just examples that people, I think, need to be more aware of, or at least made aware of to begin with, because that can at least stop some of these cases before they begin. Another example is I had a friend recently, they had a dog that was outside on a leash, and it wasn't sufficient enough to keep that dog in a stable place, and the dog got out multiple times, and unfortunately the second time the dog did not come back. So we know that that's not abuse per se, but that's a dog that's out there in the street as a stray that's unfortunately, we don't know what's going on with that dog. It's just away from home. And so that opens up the door for people who might not have the best of intentions or even know how to take care of a dog securely to take that dog, and then that leads to things down the line as well. So if we know about these things to begin with, then maybe that can, prevent all of this altogether.
Yeah, I really love the thoughtful, long-form nature of the story. Victor, I thought it was really great, and so I'm curious. I'm like, what do we have you working on now? What are you working on next?
Hey, well, thank you, Christy. This is all a part of our Solutionaries pieces that we do. It's one story every single month, so we've covered drug solutions, gun solutions, issues in the schools where kids are not able to make it into the classroom, where we have issues with kids being absent and chronic absenteeism. So those are a few things that we're tackling right now. We are looking to showcase a Solutionaries person in our community that's actually doing something to make change. So I can't tell you who exactly we're going to be talking to, but it's a familiar name, I'll tell you that at least.
I can't wait. Good stuff. Victor Williams with me live today. I really appreciate it. And I know you're covering several other stories today, so I'm going to let you get back to it. It's good to see you.